Hello, my name is Ivan Tejeda with Airbnb Prohost, and you're listening to That Real Estate Tech Guy.
I can tell you one thing. Technology is the single most important aspect of every business that has successfully scaled.
It's time for That Real Estate Tech Guy. It's your weekly chance to explore how technology can help your real estate business explode. Each week, you'll hear from real estate investors who have been there and done that, and find out their favorite technology tips. Listen in as Jordan speaks with tech companies and learns about new technologies and new ideas that will help you scale your business. And now, join your host, Jordan Samuel Fleming, CEO of Smartphone, for this week's episode.
Hey everybody, it's Jordan Samuel Fleming here with another episode of That Real Estate Tech Guy, and I am delighted that my co-host for today's episode is Ivan Tejeda. God, I even practiced this. Ivan Tejeda. Ivan, fantastic. Even if I mispronounced you, I apologize. Fantastic having a podcast, and just give a little introduction to yourself and your business.
No, thank you for having me. Really quickly, my name is Ivan Tejeda, and you did actually a pretty good job. Most people get that wrong 20 times before they get it right. So awesome there. I'm in the Airbnb business space. I'm now actually coaching folks that want to get into the real estate business, namely through rental arbitrage, but also working with folks who are real estate investors that want to cash flow more. That's actually my focus now. I'm focusing more so on real estate investors that have properties, but then they've mainly traditionally rented out their homes, like year leases and such. So now we're maximizing their cash flow by putting it on short-term rental and mid-term rental platforms such as Airbnb, which is my expertise. And I'm just delighted and excited to be on and hopefully bring some value to your audience.
I'm really excited actually because it's been, the Airbnb discussion has been kind of becoming more in my radar. It's cropping up and cropping up. I was just at a real estate event in Jamaica a couple months ago, and there was TJ was there, and there was a lot of people talking about Airbnb in a way that I never heard it before. So just in general, like if we can kind of just survey the landscape, obviously a lot of the people that I've dealt with over the years and that listen to this podcast are wholesalers, would go down the traditional wholesale or, fix and flip, occasionally maybe buy and to hold some. Why does Airbnb make more sense just as a general business case sometimes?
So it's the beauty about Airbnb that I particularly love is the different avenues of doing the business, but also catering to different individuals. So for example, when someone is a real estate investor and they're wholesaling or flipping homes, they have the option to keep that home and actually convert it into, rentals that cash flow very heavily, especially compared to the traditional form. But more and more, is Airbnb, the dynamic of Airbnb is growing simply because a lot of people are not as romantic with owning a home anymore. Like I've met people who literally all they do is, since they work remote, is they'll literally travel to different countries, different states, and go about their lives in that way where they'll stay 2-3 months at a time in one location and fly and go somewhere else. And they don't necessarily have a primary home, which is pretty cool if you think about it. A lot harder for us who have families to do, but some have full-blown families and they're doing just that. So there's different facets to it, and that's what I love about it. There's definitely an increase in market when it comes to the Airbnb short-term rental, mid-term rental space, and I don't see it really going anywhere. I think that even now, even though a lot of people are like, oh, it's like just so saturated, or too many people are doing it where I live or so on. It's still so wide open and still so early on that, anybody can get started and really make a killing.
Yeah. And, I think, I've seen as someone who does a lot of traveling for my work, I definitely, I kind of alternate between going through the hotel chains that I know just as a comfort. Like I know what I'm going to get. I go to the Hilton. I know I'm going to get exactly what I'm going to get. But then sometimes I either can't get a hotel I like or I just want something different. And I've noticed that there has been an upswing, particularly in places, major city centers, London and New York, etc., of what I would class as professional Airbnbs, right? When it started out, I could tell it was so-and-so renting out their house when they were away. Now it feels like there's a much bigger professional element. Is that true? Has it kind of really gone that way?
That's absolutely true. And as a matter of fact, in my business, in my portfolio of rentals, I actually cater mainly to working travelers because, folks mainly want to have a nice place that they can lay their head and, unwind from a long day of work. And same with like we cater to travel nurses and people who are probably like between homes, that their home is getting closed on, but they're in between homes, and so many different people that they just want that homey aspect of it as well, which hotels don't necessarily offer. So I can totally understand the fact that, when you're going into an Airbnb, technically you're kind of like rolling the dice in the sense of like, if you're already accustomed to going to hotels, you're going to probably try to stick to that unless, like you said, there's not that many options. However, I feel like people now, or Airbnb in particular, is making it a lot easier for folks just like you that prefer to go to a hotel because you know what you'll get. But they're making it a lot easier for you to make a decision based on you being able to see reviews that are left, based on them classifying certain types of homes because they're catering to working travelers or catering to whatever activity is that you're doing. So on the software side of things, now that we're talking about tech, is that Airbnb is doing an excellent job in seeing you what and showing you what exactly you'll get before you actually book, which takes away a little bit of the nerves and the aspect of, that rolling that dice, if you will. But no, I totally agree.
And it's funny, when I travel with my family, I got 2 young kids, and so when my wife and I travel, we almost exclusively with Airbnbs because a hotel's not going to suit us. We want the kitchen. Yep. We want to cook the kids breakfast and dinners, and we want to have 2 bedrooms and a living room and not be interconnected hotel rooms. And so we actually use Airbnb a lot. And it's an interesting point you raise about the 2 sides of the technological kind of evolution for this. The one side probably, which we'll get into, which is the back end and the sort of administrative element of building these businesses and managing these properties. But on the other side, there's the customer facing, which is just as it improves, it is able to drive people in a more confident way. I hadn't thought of it like that.
No, it's absolutely right. And not only that, is like Airbnb is rapidly, or other platforms as well, but mainly Airbnb are rapidly taking market share when it comes to larger groups. Hotels are fine if it's you and someone else maybe. Even when there's hotel rooms that have 2 bedrooms, is like a suite, it's nice. They're so overpriced that even those are getting pushed towards Airbnb. So when you have 3+ individuals that are wanting to stay in one location, hotels are almost off the question. Like you said, when you're traveling with family, it's nearly impossible to do, especially if you want to have some sort of home cooked meal that you want to enjoy with the family, or have some people over and that you're visiting or something like that. So that's a space that, I actually encourage, people who are getting started and have the capital to buy single family homes or rent single family homes and put those on Airbnb, because you literally have almost no competition. Of course, with the right market research and all these different things in place, you can kill it that way.
Well, before we get into the technology aspect, for my own curiosity's sake, how did you sort of get yourself into this game to this level? What was your journey that brought you to where you are now?
Yeah, so very quickly, mainly I started, like most people, I wanted to get into the real estate industry or somehow invest in real estate. And it was always a thing that was so far-fetched. It's like, okay, because I need to save a couple $100,000 or a couple $1,000 to be able to get started and have some sort of money to get invested. And then, lo and behold, I came across the Airbnb idea. I had already stayed at some, and I'm like, every time I went to one, which I know happens to a lot of people, I went to one, I was like, man, I can totally do something like this. I can totally get a house or an apartment and convert it and make money. And that's, I think, almost everybody that stays at an Airbnb, that thought comes to mind. So I decided to act on that thought back in 2018. we were moving. My wife and I were moving from Miami, where we're from, and moving into North Carolina, Charlotte, where I'm at now. And we had purchased a home, but that home was going to take about 3 more months to finish being built. And I had already, secured a job position here in Charlotte, so I needed to come here early. So I said I had already done research for 2-3 months on, really soaking as much as I can, scavenging the internet to try to figure out the pieces to put together to, land and getting this business started. So long story short, I ended up renting an apartment, sight unseen in Charlotte, relatively close to where I was going to work. And I did it in a strategic way where that would eventually become my very first Airbnb. So I'm doing the rental arbitrage model. So I didn't buy this apartment, I rented it. And then we brought in a bunch of our own stuff, put a lot of stuff in our storage, and then used a great deal of our own stuff for that apartment. So we actually got started with our first Airbnb with literally $2,000, all things considered, because again, we use a lot of our own furniture to get that one started. So once that house was finished, that apartment was staged, and my wife and I moved out, and we listed it that same day. And just like that, man, that the rest is history. We got a booking that very next day, and then ever since then, we have in that same building like 8 different listings. The building across another 8 or 9. So yeah, that's pretty much the beginning.
And I think one of the things that would concern that immediately crops to my mind if I was thinking of starting an Airbnb business is the logistics and management elements of having to deal with check-ins, check-outs, cleaning, all these sorts of things, right? So, and obviously, given that you also coach people on this, you've got a very deep insight and understanding of this. I mean, if someone's thinking of getting into this game, the Airbnb side of things, they're going to have these fears. Are those fears accurate, or actually is it a lot easier? Does the technology help you? Does the Airbnb's back end, I presume they've got a pretty robust back end, does it manage a lot of this?
Yeah, that's very much the case. I think that a lot of people are intimidated with the technology side of things and being able to, have all of their ducks in a row. But as humans, I feel like most of us, and I dealt with this myself, is like we get what's called analysis paralysis, and we get stuck with trying to figure out every single detail before we actually take a step. But yeah, I mean, they definitely have valid, reason to feel that way. However, even though there are a plethora of softwares out there that make your life easier to manage your Airbnb business, I can confidently say that the only platform that we use in my business is Airbnb. Airbnb has done a very good job in putting all of the tools into their platform so that you can basically run your whole operation through there, from communicating with guests and automating them to, adding team members like your cleaners so that they can see the calendar and they know when exactly to go clean a certain property, to having pre-saved messages that you often use, and price strategy, all of these different things, the calendar, be able to see all of the properties availability and where the rooms for improvement and your KPIs, all these different things are all within the Airbnb platform. So yeah, I know a lot of gurus out there that are actually, using a bunch of different software, whether that be Wheelhouse or AirDNA or Price Labs, a bunch of different pricing tools, especially. We do everything in-house natively on Airbnb, and we do manual pricing, which is what allows us to maximize our profitability in comparison to these AIs that are trying to figure out what the best price at a current state is. That's what kind of makes me and my students stand out from the bunch.
Interesting. So just out of curiosity, so how many properties on Airbnb do you actually have right now?
We currently have 17 listings.
Okay. Because to me that sounds like a lot of administrative work. But realistically, if the back end is able to handle guest communication, guest booking, cleaning and all that, then realistically, there really shouldn't be that much work that goes
No,
into it on
apart
a
from
day-to-day basis?
that, yeah, apart from that, I have a reservations coordinator, which basically her job is to do everything else that the computer can't do, right? The humanity of it. Obviously some people are going to have, issues checking in, even though we have literally a check-in guide that is a slideshow that tells them step by step to the point of press the button number 2 to go to level 2, making it super simple for people. But of course, there's still, those people who still need, that attention, and we'll have a reservation coordinator to be there for those type of things. Or if, certain issues happen where, microwave stops working or this, that, and the third work orders need to happen. So we have that in place. And that's pretty much the only other individual that we have or need in our business, other than the cleaners, which is the bread and butter of the business, of course.
And the cleaners, I mean, obviously they need to be efficient. They need to
Yes.
be reliable. And
Yes.
you got to really have, particularly if you've got a property that's got a lot of bookings going on, you're going to have to, that turnaround is going to have to happen very, very quickly.
Absolutely. Cleaners are not just cleaners in this business. Cleaners are your frontline people. They're the ones that are going to see things for the first time. They're going to see what's missing, what needs to get done, what kind of damage there is. They're more than just cleaners. And in our business, we make it a point to compensate them more than just cleaners, because they are more than that. Of course, their main role is to make sure that it's nice and tidy for the next guest to come. But that's all encompassing. If you hire just a regular cleaner, all they're going to do is clean. But if you want someone who makes sure that everything is how it's supposed to be, whether if it's, a painting or something that's crooked, or, the carpet needs cleaning and they need to let you know, hey, we need to send some cleaners to clean the carpet. All those different things go a long way. So yeah, our cleaners know that, they're not just cleaners to us.
The professional touch to make sure that when someone comes in, they really feel like this is exactly what they're expecting. And
Exactly.
every single time that happens, that is a critical customer element that you can't put a price on, really, because that's your whole business.
Absolutely. And up to this point, since we started the business, we have, upwards of 1,200 reviews, and we've maintained Superhost status, which is basically a status that Airbnb gives you when you are, an exceptional host and so on. And we've never not been Superhost, because obviously you can get it one quarter and then they can take it off if you didn't perform, but we've never not had it. And cleanliness is one of the biggest reasons that's the case. And, our check-in process, communication, accuracy, and all these different things that are important to Airbnb and the guests that are booking.
Now, you mentioned the pricing. You mentioned that there were tools out there, or maybe even inside of Airbnb, where they're trying to essentially, move the pricing around to maximize whatever the opportunities are. I mean, but you also said that you don't do it. So can you explain a little about what those, how do those tools, what are they trying to achieve, and why is it you chose not to do it?
Great question. So in essence, what Airbnb offers is the ability for you to basically make your life easier with smart pricing, is what they call it. I call it dumb pricing, honestly, because it literally just gives, the Airbnb has the most information, right? And they know what they need to price your unit to just be occupied as much as possible, but they don't keep in mind as much, how much you can stand to make based on that. They're mainly driven by occupancy versus pricing and maximizing your cash flow as a business. Likewise with other platforms out there like Price Labs and other platforms, they are going based off of the AI, supply, demand, all these different elements, but they're not able to get as granular as to knowing how big of a demand there is because of any type of influx of stays or whatnot. So that's why we opted for dynamic pricing, internally. I now have enough units to where I basically almost never look at other people's or other hosts' listings to see where their occupancy is and all of that to be able to come up with my price strategy. Since we have enough and they're pretty much very close to one another, if I see that there's an influx in bookings all of a sudden and it's a couple months out, I then go and see, why is that? Why are we getting, bookings that are just a weekend and it's literally 2 months away? People don't necessarily always do that. So at that point, we have that. And then within the Airbnb platforms, there's rule sets. So that basically means that you can create custom rules within your calendar that if they stay 3 nights, they get a 25% off. Or if they stay 2 nights, they are not able to get a discount. And you can you can customize it very much so where, like, I can guarantee you 70 or 85% of hosts out there probably don't know that even exists. Hosts that are on Airbnb, the whole rule sets thing. I think that's our most powerful tool. And what makes us different from pretty much all other hosts. I was looking at the numbers actually this morning. I like to look at them to see where we're at. We're 94% occupied for the last 6 months across all of our listings. That's unheard of, especially in a climate where we're at right now, where pretty much, people are just scared, like, oh, we're not getting bookings. Like, I see it all the times, and it's like, what happened? It was like a flip in the switch. Airbnb did something, and I'm now no longer, getting bookings. And that's simply because your price strategy is not adjusting to the climate that we're in, or you're not pivoting to cater to certain guests. And that goes to show, like, even with the COVID pandemic, when we were in the middle of that we actually had our biggest months, that we grew those days where literally almost every host were losing their shirts. Very renowned, known ones, YouTuber ones that are out there, and I won't mention any names, but they lost business. And in our case, we grew.
Really interesting thing you said there, which I thought was counterintuitive, which I was not expecting, was because you mentioned, the reason why you don't use the AI pricing model that Airbnb, or pricing structure inside of Airbnb, is that they are prioritizing occupancy rates over potentially profit, over the cash flow, the money. And yet you've got an occupancy that rate of so high, like you've got a phenomenal occupancy rate there. I mean, in the 90s is absolutely superb. So, I mean, given that on the one hand you're saying, well, we don't want to use that because it prioritizes occupancy, but on the other hand, you've got such a high occupancy rate. Is that just the alchemy of what makes you great, or and that you teach your students, or is there an understanding of your market that allows you to pitch things so that you can maximize both?
Absolutely. It's really understanding who my ideal guest is. And whenever we get a new listing, we keep that guest in mind, right? So in our cases, like I said, it's like working travelers, travel nurses, people who are professionals. So our listings cater to that individual, and we make it known through our, description, our pictures, and all of that stuff. But of course, is also understanding the pricing based on seasonality, based on the time of the week that we're in. So many different variables that come into place that actually allows us to not only, maximize our occupancy, but at the same time not leave money on the table, which is what we're here for. So when you have AI driven software that their main goal is to basically just get bookings, they're kind of flying under the radar when it comes to pricing. They just want to guarantee income. Whereas for me, I rather make sure that I'm walking that fine line between not getting bookings and maximizing my profitability. So, very quickly for my price strategy, what I do is that I'm actually not competitive with the rest of the market if the nights available are further than 2 weeks out, or even a week out for a lot of our listings. So the only way that I am able to be competitive that far out is if a guest is staying for 30 days plus, 28 days plus. Right. So I make it that way. That strategy is so that I cater mainly to longer term stays and my calendar stays open. However, if I see that 2 weeks out or a week out, I still have nights available, that's when I start becoming competitive with the rest of the market, hotels included, and other hosts. And then I can flash sale kind of those nights so that I don't, leave money on the table, and I still keep my occupancy high, but still optimizing for those longer term stays. And that's how I'm able to maximize occupancy and profitability.
That's great. So, I mean, that's wonderful, because that is a perfect example of, of playing all the bases really well. Keep playing the maximum pricing until you have to then start to tweak and maneuver, and so you're the balance, instead of driving just for occupancy, you're swaying between pricing to occupancy based on what's happening at that moment, as opposed to trying to always focus on one or the other.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
That's really interesting. Now, because you've got a coaching, I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of, people who listen and watch this that have been curious. Like you said at the start, you've stayed in Airbnb and you thought, God damn, I could probably do this. I wonder how I start. Tell me a little bit before we get into the fast five questions. Tell me a little bit about the coaching. How that works. How people can get started with you, because it's something that I think people are going to be worried. They'll think Airbnb sounds cool, and then the second thought will be, Jesus, I bet it's a lot of work. I wonder if I can do it.
Yes. So to learn more about our course and what we have to offer, no matter what time period you're listening or watching this, prohostcourse.com is where the content will be. But more so than that, like follow me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. I'm currently at this present time posting like 3 reels a day, literally on just value there. And the course is very simple. It's 60 plus videos at the time of this recording of literally how to start and manage and scale your Airbnb business and portfolio. Everything from A to Z is covered there, from literally like how to start your business legally, getting an LLC, all those good things, getting your bank account, all the way to, launching auxiliary businesses like cleaning companies and real estate photography companies that kind of aid back to your business, and everything else in between: price strategy, maximizing occupancy, managing, hiring cleaners and reservations coordinator, the works. That's all in there. So my Instagram handle is ivantejeda.co, and that's pretty much across all of the platforms. And I'm also on YouTube. We're doing at least 1 video per week now, and that's with time going to be, we're going to scale that as well. So a lot of value out there for free, even before you decide to get the course.
That's fantastic. And I think, particularly now that Dispo, if you've got traditional wholesalers and fix and flip folks, where you got a market that the Dispo options are tightening potentially, or they're changing radically, people need to start looking for different avenues to create cash flow opportunities. And it sounds to me like this is one of those, you should add this string to your bow where it is appropriate, where the market is right, or where where you're able to start stepping into it, because we're going to need more Dispo options, and this is a very sensible cash flow one. Let me quick question from what you just said here. You mentioned kind of starting auxiliary businesses. I assume then, can I assume that just like in the real estate, in the wholesale game, or no, maybe not in the wholesale game, but there are professionals and there are amateurs, right? Mm-hmm. And I would imagine that in most markets, you're going to have a course, you're going to have a set of professional Airbnb hosts that are really trying to build a business, but you're still going to have a full wash of your amateurs, the people who've got one property that they're just their own or whatever it is. So when you're building out these auxiliary businesses, you're essentially building out a business that you're going to use, a trusted business, but then you're going to potentially supply to this other market who aren't going to be smart enough to create these auxiliary businesses, and you're just adding more breadth to your portfolio. Is that correct? That's
exactly right. Especially when it comes to the cleaning side of things. You want to have, especially when you're starting off, if you don't have enough work to hire a cleaner full time, then it's probably going to be best for either A, partnering with other Airbnb hosts and you hiring someone collectively that works only with you guys, or B, you going out and getting business for that cleaner that you hired full time into your business. Because I'm not a huge fan of hiring cleaning companies, especially at scale. Like you might need to bite that bullet in the beginning when you only have 1 unit, 2 units or whatnot, because you don't have enough business. But if you're trying to scale, the best way to do it is to have an in-house cleaner that supplies the need for all of your units. And if that means then you having an auxiliary business of cleaning that also caters to other, doesn't even have to be Airbnb hosts. It could just be regular cleaners that, go into homes and clean every other week or whatnot for residential, homes. So yeah, that's one of the biggest hacks nowadays. And being that cleanings is probably the second, most costly expense that we have in this business, it's a good idea to do it in-house.
Absolutely. Well, listen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take us into the Fast Five before we close this episode out. Now, I'm going to make this a slightly... I change the rules all the time. It's my podcast. I'll do what I want.
You got the power.
Yeah, so I've got the Fast Five, but I'm going to expand it to say that these could be you or your students, because ultimately I'm going to guess that the answer to a lot of these we've already talked about, given that there's really one technology platform. But so quick questions, quick answers. What technology product has had the biggest impact on your business? I gotta suggest Airbnb for that one.
Yep, 100% Airbnb.
I mean, that's an easy one. But now you can think of your students. What is the biggest mistake you've seen made with the technology in your business?
With the technology is not taking full advantage of the technology. In essence, it's not understanding specifically the rule sets that are available, or the pricing strategy tools that are within the Airbnb platform.
So corresponding question then, number 3, what is your best advice, or the best advice you give your students when they start working with that technology for the first time? How do they get started?
Well, in my course, they get a template of, there's literally just copy and paste, follow step-by-step instructions on how to do it. The advice I would give them is to follow the video and do it just how I do it. And of course, once they get the gist of it, they can start creating their own rule sets that cater to their specific needs.
Thinking back to that first property that you and your wife did, and what's the one thing you wish you'd known when you first started out with that property?
That's a very, very good question. When I started with that one property, I wish I knew that it was going to be okay. Honestly, I was scared. Starting into this new venture. You're kind of just throwing the spaghetti out at the counter, hoping that it sticks, type of thing. And I wish that I knew that it was going to be okay, and that we'll be able to scale that much faster. We actually got 12 listings in our first year, so we moved pretty quickly. But I wish that's what I wish I knew, that it was going to be all right.
Okay, now if someone's just starting out in an Airbnb business, what are the 3 biggest areas of focus that they should be thinking about if they're just starting out?
Location, obviously. I would say location, but that's too cliche. I was going to say that, but no, location. Cleaners, making sure that you have the right reliable cleaners. And I would also say, making the process for check-in extremely easy for guests. That's what, if you got cleanliness and an easy check-in guide that people can get into the property in, you're almost always guaranteed a 5-star review.
Yeah, you're already on top. If it's clean and it's easy, what the hell else do I need?
That's it. Yeah. That's it.
Ivan, listen, man. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you, and I appreciate you coming and giving a bit of your expertise. We've got all of your details. I'm going to make sure on the podcast page we link to your social media and the website.
Appreciate that.
And I just want to say thank you so much. If you guys are interested in listening to this and you're interested and you've been curious about Airbnbs, head over to Ivan's site and hit him up on Instagram. Because I've been watching him on Instagram. I've been following. That's why I reached out on Instagram, because I watched one of his videos and I thought, man, that's interesting. So please do check him out and make sure you like and subscribe and do all the things you're supposed to do and you never do. Ivan, thanks so much, man.
I appreciate this so much, Jordan. Thank you for having me on, and I look forward to touching base again in the future.
Thanks for listening to another amazing episode of That Real Estate Tech Guy. Head over to thatrealestatetechguy.com to check out all episodes and get special discounts on tons of awesome real estate technology platforms.